April 18th, 1992. Dear friend, I have made a terrible mess of things. I really have. I feel terrible about it. Patrick said the best thing I can do is just stay away for a while. It all started last Monday. Mary Elizabeth came to school with a book of poems by a famous poet named E. Cummings. The story behind the book was that she saw a movie that talked about one poem that compares this woman's hands to flowers and rain. She thought it was so beautiful that she went out and bought the book. She has read it a lot of times since, and she said she wanted me to have my own copy. Not the copy she bought, but a new one. All day she told me to show everyone the book. I know I should have been grateful, but it was a very nice thing to do. But I wasn't grateful. I wasn't grateful at all. Don't get me wrong, I acted like I was, but I wasn't. To tell you the truth, I was starting to get mad. Maybe if she would have given me the copy of the book that she bought for herself, it would have been different. Or maybe if she had just hand copied the rain poem she loves on a piece of nice paper. And definitely if she didn't make me show the book to everyone we know. Maybe I should have been honest then. But it didn't feel like the right time. When I left school that day, I didn't go home because I just couldn't talk to her on the phone, and my mother is not a very adroit liar about things like that. So instead, I walked to the area where all the shops and video stores are. I went straight to the bookstore, and when the lady behind the counter asked me if I needed any help, I opened up my bag and I returned the book Mary Elizabeth bought me. I didn't do anything with the money, it just sat in my pocket. When I walked home, all I could think was what a terrible thing it was that I just did, and I started crying. By the time I walked in the front door, I was crying so much that my sister stopped watching television to talk to me. When I told her what I did, she drove me back to the bookstore because I was too messy to drive, and I got the book back, which made me feel a little better. When Mary Elizabeth asked me where I had been all day on the phone that night, I told her that I went to the store with my sister. And when she asked if I bought her something nice, I said I did. I didn't even think she was serious, but I said it anyway. I just felt so bad about almost returning her book. I spent the next hour on the phone listening to her talk about the book. Then we said goodnight. Then I went downstairs to ask my sister if she could drive me to the store again so I could get Mary Elizabeth something nice. My sister told me to drive myself and that I had better start being honest with Mary Elizabeth about how I feel. Maybe I should have then, but it just didn't feel like the right time. The next day in school, I gave Mary Elizabeth the gift that I drove to buy her. It was a new copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. The first thing Mary Elizabeth said was, "That's original." I just reminded myself that she didn't say it mean. She wasn't making fun of me, she wasn't comparing or criticizing, and she really wasn't. Believe me. So I just explained to her how Bill gives me special books to read outside of class and how To Kill a Mockingbird was the first one and how it was special to me. Then she said, "Thank you, it's very sweet." But then she went on to explain how she had read it 3 years earlier and thought it was overrated and how they turned it into a black and white film with famous actors like Gregory Peck and Robert Duvall that won an Academy Award for the screenplay writer. I just kind of put my feelings away somewhere after that. I left school, walked around, and didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning. When I explained to my father why, he told me to act like a man. The next day in school, when Mary Elizabeth asked where I had been the day before, I told her that I bought a pack of cigarettes, went to the big boy, and spent the entire day reading the E. Cummings book and eating club sandwiches. I knew I was safe saying that because she would never ask me any questions about the book. And I was right. After she got done talking about it that time, I didn't think I'd ever really need to read it myself, even if I wanted to. I definitely think I should have been honest then, but to tell you the truth, I was getting as mad as I used to get playing sports, and it was starting to scare me. Luckily, Easter vacation was starting on Friday, and it distracted things a little bit. Bill gave me Hamlet to read for the break. He said I would need the free time to really concentrate on the play. I guess I don't need to say who wrote it. The only advice Bill gave me was to think about the main character in terms of the other main characters in the books I've read thus far. He said not to get caught up thinking the play was too fancy. So, on Good Friday yesterday, we had a special showing of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. What made it special was the fact that everyone knew it was the beginning of Easter vacation, and a lot of kids were still wearing their suits and dresses from Mass. It reminded me of Ash Wednesday in school when the kids come in with thumbprints on their foreheads. It always adds an air of excitement. After the show, Craig invited all of us back to his apartment to drink wine and listen to the White Album. After the record was over, Patrick suggested we all play Truth or Dare, a game that he loves to play when he's buzzed. Guess who chose Dares over Truth all night? Me. I just didn't want to tell Mary Elizabeth the truth because of the game. It was working pretty well most of the night. The dares were things like chug a beer, but then Patrick gave me a dare. I don't even think he knew what he was doing, but he gave it to me anyway. Kiss the prettiest girl in the room on the lips. That's when I chose to be honest. In retrospect, I probably could have not picked a worse time. The silence started after I stood up, since Mary Elizabeth was sitting right next to me. By the time I had knelt down in front of Sam and kissed her, the silence was unbearable. It wasn't a romantic kiss, it was friendly, like when I played Rocky and she played Janet, but it didn't matter. I could say that it was the wine or the beer that I chugged. I could also say that I had forgotten the time Mary Elizabeth asked me if I thought she was pretty, but I'd be lying. The truth is that when Patrick dared me, I knew that if I kissed Mary Elizabeth, I would be lying to everyone, including Sam, including Patrick, including Mary Elizabeth, and I just couldn't do it anymore, even if it was part of a game. After the silence, Patrick did his best to salvage the evening. The first thing he said was, "Wow, isn't this awkward?" But it didn't work. Mary Elizabeth walked quickly out of the room and into the bathroom. Patrick told me later that she didn't want anyone to see her cry. Sam followed her, but before she completely left the room, she turned to me and said, serious and dark, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" It was the look on her face when she said it and how much she meant it. It suddenly made everything seem like it really was. I felt terrible, just terrible. Patrick immediately stood up and took me out of Craig's apartment. We walked to the street, and the only thing I was aware of was the cold. I said that I should go back inside and apologize. Patrick said, "No, I'll get our coats. Just stay here." When Patrick left me outside, I started to cry. It was real and panicky, and I couldn't stop it. When Patrick came back, I said, really crying, "I really think I should go apologize." Patrick shook his head. "Believe me, you don't want to go in there." Then he jiggled the car keys in front of my face and said, "Come on, I'll take you home." In the car, I told Patrick everything that had been going on about the record, about the book, and To Kill a Mockingbird, and how Mary Elizabeth never asked any questions. And all Patrick said was, "It's too bad you're not gay." That made me stop crying a little bit. Then again, if you were gay, I would never date you. You're a mess. That made me start laughing a little bit. And I thought Brad was fucked up. Jesus. That made me laugh a lot more. Then he turned on the radio and we drove through the tunnels back home. When he dropped me off, Patrick told me the best thing to do was keep away for a while. I guess I already told you that. He said that when he knew more, he'd give me a call. Thanks, Patrick. Don't mention it. And then I said, "You know, Patrick, if I were gay, I'd want to date you." I don't know why I said it, but it seemed right. Patrick just smiled cocky and said, "Of course." Then he peeled out down the road. When I lay down in my bed that night, I put on the Billie Holiday record and started reading the book of E. E. Cummings' poems. After I read the poem that compares the women's hands to flowers and rain, I put the book down and went to the window. I stared at my reflection and the trees behind it for a long time, not thinking anything, not feeling anything, not hearing the record for hours. Something really is wrong with me, and I don't know what it is. Love always, Charlie. April 26, 1992. Dear friend, nobody has called me since that night. I don't blame them. I have spent the whole vacation reading Hamlet. Bill was right. It was much easier to think of the kid in the play like the other characters I've read about so far. It has also helped me while I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with me. It didn't give me any answers necessarily, but it was helpful to know that someone else has been through it, especially someone who lived such a long time ago. I did call Mary Elizabeth and I told her that I'd been listening to the record every night and reading the E. E. Cummings book. She just said, "It's too late, Charlie." I would have explained that I didn't want to start going on dates again and I was just doing these things as a friend, but I knew it would have only made things worse, so I didn't. I just said, "I'm sorry." And I really was sorry. And I know that she believed me. But when that didn't make any difference and there was nothing but a bad silence on the phone, I really knew it was too late. Patrick did call me, but all he said was that Craig got really angry at Sam about me and I should keep staying away until things got clear. I asked him if he would like to go out, just him and me. He said that he would be busy with Brad and family things, but he'd try to call me if he could find the time. So far, he hasn't. I would tell you about Easter Sunday with my family, but I've already told you about Thanksgiving and Christmas, and there really isn't much of a difference. Except that my father got a raise and my mother didn't because she doesn't get paid for housework, and my sister stopped reading those self esteem books because she met a new boy. My brother did come home, but when I asked him if his girlfriend read my report on Walden, he said no because she broke up with him when she found out he was cheating on her. That happened a while ago. So I asked him if he had read it himself, and he said that he hadn't because he was too busy. He said he would try to read it over vacation. So far, he hasn't. So, I went to visit my Aunt Helen, and for the first time in my life, it didn't help. I even tried to follow my own plan and remember all the details about the last time I had a great week, but that didn't help either. I know that I brought this all on myself. I know that I deserve this. I'd do anything not to be this way. I do anything to make it up to everyone and to not have to see a psychiatrist who explains to me about being passive aggressive and to not have to take the medicine he gives me, which is too expensive for my dad, and to not have to talk about bad memories with him or be nostalgic about things, about bad things. I just wish that God or my parents or Sam or my sister or someone would just tell me what's wrong with me. Just tell me how to be different in a way that makes sense, to make this all go away and disappear. I know that's wrong because it's my responsibility, and I know that things get worse before they get better because that's what my psychiatrist says. But this is a if this is a worse but this is a horse that feels too big. After a week of not talking to anyone, I finally called Bob. I know that's wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. I asked him if he had anything I could buy. He said he had a quarter ounce of pot left. So I took some of my Easter money and bought it. I've been smoking it all the time since. Love always, Charlie.